Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's perhaps fitting that the debate tonight has been held on Burns Night because Robert Burns was a great egalitarian and champion on social justice, and that is an issue that's at the heart of about how we treat our fellow citizens. When the Chancellor said no one would be left behind, it was a comforting show of solidarity to all. A man's a man for all that, as the Bard would have said. But it's been over 10 months and the pleas of 3 million people left to struggle have been utterly ignored. It reminds me of another Burns quote: "Man's inhumanity to man makes countless thousands mourn." The reasons for people being excluded have been raised many, many times in this chamber, and the case is absolutely clear. How can 10% of the working population simply be dismissed as collateral damage? On what planet does that make sense? We need the excluded, all 3 million of them. They're the grafters, they're innovators. They'll help to rebuild after the crisis if we help them now. Instead, they're being ground to the ground by poverty and despair, by a government that claims to be business friendly. Tonight, the focus is on small limited company directors, but the issue, if not the detail of the solution, applies to all those excluded groups. And I want to emphasise again that no one should be left behind. I note the announcement today of another proposal has been put forward by the Gaps in Support All-Party Parliamentary Group. The Targeted Income Grant Scheme costed about $10.5 billion. This would provide some support for newly self-employed, PAYE freelancers and taxpayers excluded by the 50-50 rule, as well as limited company directors. I welcome this contribution. After 10 months without any options drafted by the Treasury themselves, they're getting the work done for them by the very people who have been left out, showing just how innovative and determined a group they are. I very much hope that they'll take this proposal seriously and work with the excluded groups to reach solutions and not simply scramble for excuses to reject. There are around 2 million actively trading limited companies in the UK, which are micro and small companies. Collectively, they employ 7.5 million people. As the Minister knows, they fall into a separate category than the self-employed, commonly pay themselves a mixture of PAYE and dividends when the company has a profit. Many company directors found themselves unable to furlough, as this would have prevented them from working, and this could have meant the demise of their business. Some were actively excluded due to running an annual payroll with RTI submission date after the 19th of March. For those who could furlough, the payments were often too low to live on, as they were based solely on PAYE earnings. Many of the firms missed out on grants, particularly if they had no commercial premises, and discretionary grants could be a postcode lottery. Ministers have been told time and time again of the plight by MPs of all political persuasions, by campaigners, and by people who have first-hand experience of the difficulties faced. If I thought it would help, I would read out some of the heartbreaking stories that I've heard, not only from constituents here in Midlothian, but from all corners of the UK. But so far, these real-life stories have bounced like water off a duck's back. Yet despite the Treasury's intransigence, the issue isn't going away anytime soon. A parliamentary petition calling for support for limited company directors gained over 101,000 signatures before it closed in October, many of whom could be watching tonight and praying that the government simply doesn't trot out more irrelevant excuses of inaction. I'm hoping tonight there'll be something more solid, and if I can take away than the usual promises to listen that come from nothing. It's not enough for the Minister to tell us about what the government has done for the self-employed or others lucky enough not to fall through the gaps. Talking of support for others suggests a continued denial of reality for those excluded and it simply rubs salt into those wounds, emphasising the lack of parity and fairness. Let's dispel some of the myths while we're at it that have been brandished about to excuse this inaction. Directors of small limited companies are not fat cats or wealthy tax dodgers. They're small and family businesses. Any tax advantages for partly paying through dividends were dampened long ago. Almost 1 million of this group have only a sole director. They be the electricians, beauticians, shop owners, IT professionals. I also note the work of We Make Events to highlight the impact excluded director have had on the doubly hit events industry. People are angry, frustrated and in despair, but we're past the time to plead the case. If the government does not care about the human cost, perhaps warnings of the economic cost will finally cut through. It's the end game for many businesses, and cleaning up the mess later will be far more costly than providing support now to prevent them falling off the cliff. There are 7.6 million jobs reliant on these businesses. Many of the directors are only surviving through spiralling mountains of debt, and if they go down, there will be no place for the staff to go when the furlough ends. The small-scale entrepreneurs and wealth makers that we need to lift the economy will be instead left to wither on a shrinking vine, while unemployment cliff edge approaches. The Treasury have had plenty of time to find a solution for all 3 million excluded, and it remains their job and their duty to do so. But they've been given a head start by these worked-up proposals for a Directors' Income Support Scheme, as well as the TIGS scheme I mentioned earlier. The DISS scheme was designed by a coalition of small business leaders, tax experts and company directors, including Forgotten Limited, the ACCA, FSB, and Rebecca Seeley-Harris of Re Legal Consulting. It's not a fix for everyone, but it is a viable solution which would help many, and I very much welcome support of any kind. It's also received overwhelming cross-party endorsements from the all-party group for gaps in support, and I'm limiting my own contribution tonight to hear from a couple of colleagues on that point. I understand the Treasury have had this proposal on their desk for 6 weeks now and only just gave a full response on Friday. I know those who worked on the proposal will want to go through the detail of the Treasury response and indeed would no doubt welcome a meeting to address any concerns raised. I understand there are continued concerns that the scheme is open to fraud, which seem to me to be misplaced at best or exaggerated, particularly given the more gung-ho approach of this government to so many other emergency schemes and contracts. Every scheme has a risk, of course, and it's right to minimise it, but it's not a reason to do nothing, and has been so in many previous schemes. In fact, the DISS scheme, the very design, tackles these concerns head on. The assumption that it will run in the same parameters as the self-employed income support scheme, it will not rely on dividends, rather than a company's trading profits, which are contained in the corporation tax return, and because directors are under a strict legal obligation to provide accurate information when self-certifying, the scheme has a far higher bar to prevent fraud than many of the existing schemes. It's also addressed concerns raised about administrative burdens. It deliberately mirrors an existing working scheme and using systems already in place and operating by the Treasury and HMRC. If the government is still not persuaded of merits, will the Minister pledge tonight to at least discuss with Forgotten Limited and other stakeholders to allow them to address the concerns and work together to find solutions? If there are ongoing issues, I would urge them not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And should the government finally decide to act, let me be clear that no one scheme should be seen as a silver bullet. It's simply a first step in the right direction. Campaigning will not stop until all excluded groups receive parity. Above all else, this is fundamentally a moral issue. These are people who deserve to be supported in the same way the government has supported others. Nothing more, nothing less. And nothing can justify their lives being shattered by mere technicalities. No wrongdoing has been done, and the people are being punished for merely following the practices as set out by the government's own recommendations. With this in mind, the government's sluggish response is almost incomprehensible. At first, the Chancellor had the nerve to paint limited company directors as fat cats, not in need of support. Then the Treasury spent months scrambling for technocratic excuses not to take action. Now, thanks to the work of campaign groups and MPs, the Treasury has seen two proposals that would take the first steps towards plugging some of these gaps, while relying on the same infrastructure as other existing schemes. There are no longer any excuses for the government not to act. A failure to do so would simply confirm the worst fears of many, that this government simply does not care and is not willing to exclude limited companies directors, and it is a deliberate policy choice. And that, quite simply, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is not something I or honourable members could stand by and watch.